Hey guys, LockyPocky Reviews here, and today I'm going to be talking about the most recent Batman film, The Batman. um, yeah, it seems like with DC lately, they basically will just put the word "the" in front of the name, because I mean, there's already a movie called Batman, so they're just like, well, let's just do it, The Batman, or like they just did the same thing with like instead of Suicide Squad, it's the Suicide Squad. Um, but yeah, anyway, that's another thing. But yeah, I guess when I saw the trailer for this movie, I was kind of building it up to be kind of it looks like it was going to be something like a detective type story, with a bit of mystery, um, you know, and I was going in with the hopes that this wouldn't be wouldn't try and copy the style of like say like the Nolan films or the Burton films or anything like that. I wanted something different. I wanted something new, and I pretty much got exactly that. This is a really solid, well-made movie that I really enjoyed, and really for the elements that I just said. This very much is done in the style of like a detective type story. It's very reminiscent of almost something out of like like David Fincher. If you've seen stuff like Seven or Zodiac, it has that kind of feel where it's almost like you're, instead of it being like a comic book villain that we're following, it's like a serial killer almost. And so and there's also lots of elements of even horror thrown into the basically like we actually get to see Batman um kind of he's like sneaking up on the bad guys in the shadows all the time and stuff like that. And so that there's a scene like early on in the movie, there's a really good scene kind of where you're sort of it's building up the appearance of Batman really, and it's just done in a really like a really good suspenseful and effective way, and like you kind of don't know where he's going to come from because they sort of focus on like dark corners or like alleyways, and so when he does show up and the score comes in, it's like, oh, this is awesome. But and yeah, we actually, like I said, with it being a detective story, we actually get to see Batman do detective type work. I mean, they always kind of the big thing that is said is like Batman is like the world's greatest detective, and yet, funnily enough, I find it very ironic that most of the Batman movies generally don't have like these types of like detective mystery things. But like this one does, and I think that's really interesting. I really liked it, and it kind of made it have a very different sort of tone compared to the other ones as well. And so I thought, like, in terms of like I think it was Matt Reeves that directed this, and like I think, like I said, I think his vision, direction, and way he kind of put this all together is really strong and really works very well. So like props to him. I mean, this is the same guy that did like the Planet of the Apes remake as well. The like Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Oh no, sorry, he did Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War of the Planet of the Apes, and like that's kind of again it's a very similar thing where it's this reimagination of a story that it's kind of been done already several times, but kind of adding its own a new perspective on it. So like this guy, I feel like this guy knows how to kind of do this sort of thing well, and and what I find interesting too with this movie is that it kind of almost made me think, realize kind of what the other films were kind of missing. Because this one definitely is very grounded in sort of reality. Like there's lots of, lots of corruption, a lot of, shady things going on. And like the city of Gotham itself is very, very shady, very, very corrupt. And there's, you really feel like this place is something that's like, it's a crime is everywhere. Things are just not going well, and everything about the film, the way that it's shot, the way that it's like the characters are sort of personified. Everything about it, just you don't question it. Like that this city is just like it's a wreck basically. And, whereas something like the Nolan films, or even the Burton ones sometimes, were very clean, and just felt like it's like Hollywood's interpretation of, a city that's in shambles. It's like, it's not, it's kind of a bit like, it doesn't, you don't feel the sense that it's like really corrupt. It's like, oh, it's like an Hollywood, like I said, Hollywood's interpretation of it, sort of thing. But like in this one, you really do feel that way. And I think that's really, really good. And, definitely makes the world feel more believable. And it also, and at the same time, also very much like a comic book. Like, I feel like this feels like I could read, like, story feels like something that could be in a comic book, easily. Like, I wouldn't even, it just would very easily translate to that. And that's really, really good. And in terms of, I guess I can't really talk about, a Batman movie without going into, I guess, the specific characters and the performances. And so, Robert Pattinson is amazing. I think he does a very, very good Batman. And it helps that he, has to be Batman for pretty much, like, most of the movie. There isn't actually, like, that much of Bruce Wayne in this, which for this kind of story makes sense. And I think he does, like, and it works for him because I think his Batman is, like, a really, really solid Batman. The only other one that I think might come close is maybe Keaton. I think I like Keaton a little bit more, but, like, he is pretty close. Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon, I really enjoyed as well. I really liked the rapport that he has with Batman, and they have a lot of scenes together, which is great. And I just thought he was very, very solid. Colin Farrell as the Penguin, completely unrecognizable. I was genuinely surprised when I saw his name in the credits, because I had seen, like, the poster and his name was there. I was in the movie just like, well, where is he? Like, I haven't noticed him yet. And then at the end, I'm like, oh, that's who he was playing. Oh. And so that was a really nice surprise. They must have put, like, so much makeup, and, there was, like, a fat suit involved as well. Like, it was, but you don't even realize, you don't even recognize that it's him, really. And, yeah, I mean, I have to, like, props to the makeup artists and costume people that did all that, because, like, it's fantastic stuff. Like, I'd be surprised if, like, that the makeup, like, it doesn't get, like, a makeup and hairstyling, like, Oscar nomination at the very least, like, for next year anyway. Because, like, it's really solid stuff, in my opinion. And so is the rest of the, like, makeup and hairstyling in the film too, but mainly on Penguin, like, it's just a great transformation there. So, props to them for that. And I guess the other major thing I'll say is that I really like the fact too that this is very much a story that doesn't rely a lot on, these big action set pieces or big effects, because that's something I feel like a lot of blockbusters sometimes can fall into the trap of, just being focused on action and effects and making these really big epic scenes. But this one very much is about, it's focused on the characters, it's focused on the story, and the mystery, and the atmosphere, and the world. Like, it doesn't need to have, like I said, these big action scenes. There are action scenes, obviously, but it isn't really the prime focus. And I think that works wonders, and just means, like, a bit more variety as well. Like, I don't mind a movie that focuses on these elements if it's done really well. And it is, because these characters are just so interesting and so engaging that I don't mind a story that's a bit slower paced, or again, it's focused more on just, like, building an atmosphere and stuff like that, and has a lot, a bit more talking, a bit more, mystery, and that I think works fine if it's done, works really well, if it's done well. And like I said, this does very much so. So really, like, lots of great stuff in this movie. In terms of, actually, no, one more thing. And one thing, again, this is something I was very surprised by, is that this movie is almost 3 hours long. And I remember going in thinking to myself, oh, like this is gonna be tough to get through. But surprisingly, I did not feel the length for a majority of the time. There was definitely a point more towards the end where I was starting to feel like, okay, like this should be wrapping up, like we should be getting to the end, and it does. When I kind of felt like I was getting a little, like, checking out a little bit, it was about to wrap up anyway, so it kind of didn't really matter too much. But yeah, if you're worried about the runtime, with this one, I don't think, I didn't feel it. But I guess that also depends on, like, how invested you are in the characters and the story. If you're not invested in the characters and stuff, then yeah, you're probably going to get bored very quickly. But if you are, if this movie is kind of the style that you're sort of into, you won't feel that length at all. So I think that's like, like I said, I was surprised. It kept me going, kept my attention for as long as it did. So, and yeah, that's, like I said, really good. But with that said, I'll go into a couple negatives. There isn't a ton. And I guess kind of linking to what I just said about the runtime, I do kind of feel like this movie maybe would have benefited from being maybe cut down a little bit. And I say maybe 10, 15, even 20 minutes, just to trim it down and I guess make the story flow a little bit better, because there were definitely moments where they sort of bring up a plot point, and then they don't mention it for all, and then it comes back up a bit later, and you're kind of like, oh right, yes, because that was something that they talked about, and it's like that's kind of, I feel like, a little bit of an issue, that I was sort of forgetting some things every now and then, and like I said, it being almost 3 hours, I think it's a bit much. Like this, I don't think this story needs to be quite that long. I think you could have done this in maybe a 2.5 hours, realistically. Because there is a lot going on in it, to be fair, but I don't think it needs to be that long to that extent, at least. But that's just me personally. And like I said, maybe it would have just made it flow a little bit better and move at not a fast pace, but like just flow better, in general. The other thing, is that the villain in this, I think is not bad or anything. I actually do quite like the villain for the most part, but I think I feel bad for doing this, but like if you compare it to some of the other villains in like a Batman movies that we've had, obviously stuff like the Joker and stuff, it isn't quite as strong of a villain, at least for me. I didn't think it was. I think like for the most part, the build up and like the way that they kind of put it as like the villain is kind of almost like a serial killer, I think is a sort of a good angle to go at. But when you sort of when he's revealed and we see that his identity is revealed, basically, I was like, I'm enjoying this, but it's not. It just isn't quite like this isn't like, oh, like this is an amazing villain. Like I really, really, really like this villain. I'm just like, they're good. They're well done, but compared to the rest of the characters in this movie, I'm kind of like, I feel like it should have been like on the same par, and it wasn't really, at least for me. And I also will say too that the ending of the movie is, again, kind of same thing, is a bit weak as well. It's not like bad or anything, but it's very like tonally is kind of a bit off from the rest of it. At least the way that it's like what happens in like events. There are some like good things that really good things that happen towards the end, but like the climax, I'd say the climax is a bit not the kind of climax I would expect for a movie like this. At least it didn't tonally match, I don't think. But with that said, though, like I said, pretty much majority of the stuff in this movie is really, really good. And even though I can't say this is like, objectively speaking, it has a fair few flaws, as the ones that I've mentioned, but I feel like the strengths really pull it up as well. Like it's one of those movies that is flawed, but still has some of the best stuff in any Batman film, I would argue. And I can't say it's quite as strong as something like Dark Knight, or even maybe the original Batman 2. I feel like maybe that one is just flows a bit better as well. But this is still a very, very good movie. And, if you kind of dig, if you hear my description, you think, like, that sounds like a movie that I would really get into, like, kind of this mystery, detective type story, you'll really enjoy this, I think. And, yeah, I just, as I said, I really do recommend this one. Overall, I'm going to give The Batman an 8 out of 10. So yeah, that's basically my thoughts on the movie, and I am going to do just a quick spoiler section as well, so if you haven't seen the movie, go and watch it. As I said, it's very good, and yeah, basically from now on, I'm just going to do a quick spoiler section, starting from now. And so, I guess there's only really two things I kind of want to talk about in this section, because there isn't a ton. But the first thing is, I thought that the whole reveal with the Wayne family, the whole thing of, the parents kind of having this dark past behind them, I thought was, again, a really nice change of pace. Because a lot of the other movies, they kind of portray the Waynes as like, these really nice people that are just, they're perfect, and, Bruce Wayne is kind of trying to live up to that expectation. But I like the kind of, there's kind of the twist that there is actually stuff going on underneath that we don't, the fact that Martha herself was going a bit insane, and then, the father, we at least think was trying to cover it up. And, for the political sort of campaign, or for the family, which is what is revealed. And again, like I said, it really fits with the rest of the tone of it being very, like the world being corrupt and all that. It kind of matches with that really well. And it also very much challenges Batman's, like Bruce Wayne / Batman's kind of mindset. The idea that he, early on he's kind of saying himself like, I am vengeance. I'm supposed to, put fear into other people and, live up to, like the legacy, I guess. Do what's right. But, there is kind of this idea that, like, the city's so broken that he can't even do it, but he just has to do it anyway. And so it kind of challenges that, like, my parents were actually... Bruce's parents, are not what he thought they were, and I thought that was really interesting. And as for Batman's arc as well, I thought was a really good, a really good arc as well. Again, towards the end, there's that scene, or at the end, I should say, sorry. There's that scene where one of the thugs, the Riddler's thugs, basically. Said he says the line, "I am vengeance," and so Batman kind of has this thought of, "Oh shit!" Like that's what I'm sort of. That was that's my line, and it kind of makes him kind of rethink his whole position, and it leads him into realizing that he's meant to be the hero, like he's meant to be that sort of beacon of hope, for other people, and. I think that's such an interesting sort of arc, and I like that it's kind of, this isn't an origin story necessarily. It is kind of more of a coming of age almost, or basically Batman kind of starting off as, he's still trying to learn the ropes and still early on in his kind of career, I guess. And this film kind of shows him sort of realizing what he is really, and discovering the truth and sort of realizing what he has to be and who he has to be. And I think that's, again, just really, really strong. Really interesting stuff. It's very similar to like what Peter Parker, his arc in No Way Home. Like that's kind of the same thing where it was starting off kind of like or even just the trilogy in general, the Tom Holland trilogy, where he starts off kind of immature, but he grows and learns who he's supposed to be. So I think that's really, really good and really well done. And that's really about it. Yeah, I don't have much else to add, but yeah, as I said, I really like this movie and definitely recommend it. And yeah, I'm sure you guys have all seen it, and yeah, you probably enjoy it too. So anyway, but thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you guys later.